that the audio is having a problem. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I am so sorry if everything, all the wonderful things that I just said were not correct or heard. All right. I'm Elizabeth Farah. As I said before, I won't go into all of it again. What I'm doing is a live stream. I haven't done this in a long, long time, but I felt like I had to directly enter the fray because our country is in at a point in time that there are two roads to take, and either one road will lead to a restoration of this country, to sanity, to morality, to truth, to patriotism, for love of country, and to full-on support of the best ally that we have, and that is the state of Israel. Or we can turn down the other direction, the direction that the radicals that are spread through every campus in this nation, hundreds and hundreds of campuses that have had billions and billions and billions of dollars infused into them from the Qatari government and a whole host of other governments. And they have perverted the minds of our students for decades. And there's so many good people that have literally been screaming from the rooftops, been yelling, waving banners, speaking, creating, doing debates, creating organizations, gathering together thousands and thousands of people, writing articles, and still our government sits blithely by and does nothing about the radicalization of our youth. And we know from history, from China to, to Palestine and to so many other nations where revolutions took place, that the youth played, Nazi Germany, the youth played an integral role to how they went forward. We're sending our kids off to college, to university, and they are learning the most abominable lies that are so clearly lies, but they're all bought in because they're, social justice warriors. They're woke. They're smart. Remember when you were in your teens and 20s and you thought you were so smart and you had all of the answers, and why didn't, the leaders or rulers, depending on the kind of country, your parents, everybody that you know, how could they have caused this horror in society or in the world, in the Middle East? They know all the answers. But you know what their answers are? What they've been taught by the radical professors and organizers of things like Students for Justice for Palestine. He was once a student, the founder of that, and he's a radical who the day after October 7th was holding a rally. Wow, it's amazing how he could bring a rally together that quickly. And he literally was joyous over what had happened the day before. The blood wasn't even dry on the kibbutzim's grounds, and he was rallying students, chanting from the river to the sea. And by the way, let me just say this right now, From the River to the Sea was made free and liberated in 1948, finally. And there is no more freedom coming to the state of Israel, the land of Israel, because it was done and done. And Israel's going nowhere. And America, I believe, will continue to support Israel. And I believe after the insanity that we've been witnessing, you and me and everybody in this country, that there may be a welling up of support to take down these DEI and woke agencies and to fire Well, you know what? When the billionaires start taking their billions out of Harvard and Columbia, that's when things will change. That is when things will change. Well, anyway, I'm sorry about the beginning of this show, my volume not being up. Let me set this up for you. Here is a debate for all the world to see. And it was set up, I'm not saying intentionally, to be an utter failure. Throughout this debate, I'll say this. Lex Fridman has done many shows. He's got a gigantic channel now. He interviews individuals. He's a very good interviewer. And I don't know if this is the first debate he's done. But what he has done in this debate is set it up to be the worst debate ever. And I'm going to introduce you to the four participants in this, two historians, a commentator, and a live streamer who knew nothing about the Israel-Palestine or Israel-Arab conflict until October 7th, and he decided to start researching. And he's a very, very smart man, young man. And he did well on this debate. But it was set up so that the participants are not diverse enough. There's only one religious person. I'm assuming he's religious because he's Muslim. There are no Christians, there are no Zionists, and there are no Jews that are observant Jews. So we've got four liberals, no Christians, no Zionists, and no practicing Jews. I think 2 or 3 of them might be atheists. I don't know about Benny Morris, but definitely Steve Burnell, I get the impression, is an atheist. I kind of get the impression that Norman Finkelstein is. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But the most important thing to remember about this debate, well, there's about 20 things, but let's just start with this one. What is the topic? You have watched many debates before. Well, I assume you have. And there's always a topic and there's a question. And one side or individual comes down on as the affirmative and the other side as the negative. So does Israel have the right to exist? That's a topic and that's a question. And then 2 people would come on the side of, yeah, stupid question, but let's go ahead. The others would say, no, I don't think that they do. And here's my brilliant reasons why. That's not here. The topic set up is Israel and Palestine. This is a topic that goes on for not 100 years, 100 years in the modern era, since the teens, since let's just say 1915 is a good starting place. 100 years or more. But it goes back 1,000, 2,000, 3,500 years. Now, you wouldn't spend the entire debate discussing that, but that none of the history, none of the founding of this conflict is brought up. So you've got a subject matter that's Israel and Palestine. What are you going to talk about? Some of the things, I just started scratching a list here. Firstly, it's one of the most complex issues there are. Some people would say that the war between the states in America was complex. It is kindergarten compared to this war. The number of participants, all the Arab League, every Arab or Muslim nation, the UN, these so-called humanitarian organizations, terrorists, and other terrorists, and other terrorists, and other terrorists, and terrorist supporting groups, all kinds of student groups, mad professors that are just, when I say mad, they know what they're doing, but they're as mad as Hitler. There are Congress people, presidents, there's peace processes, or so-called. There are treaties, the breaking of every single treaty, the breaking of every kind of framework for peace or roadmap to peace. There's genocides, bloodlusts, a call for the killing of every last Jew, man, woman, and child. There are wars after wars after wars. The wars didn't start in 1948. They started back in reality in 29 with pogroms and massacres by the leader of the Palestinian Arabs then, during the Mandate period. 47 was the beginning of the Civil War. Then there was 67 and 73 and 56 and 56 and 73. And then there's the first Lebanon War, the second Lebanon War. There are writings. There's a translation of Mein Kampf and the Protocols of the Elders of Zion into Arabic. There is the collusion and the partnership with Nazi Germany, which is so deep and so broad in the Muslim region of the Middle East that it's extraordinary. It's a bestseller. Those two books are bestsellers. They even made in Egypt the Protocols of Elders of Zion into a miniseries, like a soap opera, where you've got Jews that are planning the destruction and killing little children and drinking their blood or putting into matzah. That's in Egypt. You've got the Mandate, the legal underpinnings of the Mandate, the League of Nations, the United Nations, which after the 70s became a community of nations that became predominantly third world, Marxist, authoritarian, non-aligned, Muslim, Arab, in the groups that vied for power and control and collusion with one another. The Zionism is racism of 1975. Yasser Arafat, a terrorist speaking before the United Nations with a gun at his side. There is so much here. How about the Ottoman Turkish Muslim Balfour Declaration? I bet you haven't heard of that. What is this so-called Nakba? I call it so-called because it's not what they portray it as today. It's not even close to what they portray it as today. It is one of the greatest of lies that has ever been uttered, and now it is the dogma. This is the accepted wisdom, the truth. There is no dogma, but let's go on the nose. There's no dogma. There is no Nakba. The Nakba that they now claim is a Nakba of poor little Palestinian Arabs and their grandparents and great-great-great-grandparents and their great-great-great-grandchildren being forced out of Israel. We'll discuss that. Benny Morris will do that. But I guess I should have maybe gone back to here while I'm talking because I didn't expect to be spending as much time on this, but I think it's important. There is no Nakba. The Nakba was the Nakba that they failed, the Arab states and the Palestinian Arabs, of slaughtering every Jew, the momentous massacre that Pasha, Aman Pasha of Egypt, called for, a momentous massacre that would be spoken of as the Mongol or Turk invasions, which, of course, you know what that means, and the Crusades. That's what he was calling for. That call has never ended. That call has been ongoing since the 20s. There is no occupation. There is no occupation. And this is something that many people, good people, think that there actually is an occupation. Of course, there's not an occupation of Gaza, but there is no occupation of Judea and Samaria, which are euphemistically called the West Bank, that area. There is no occupation. And actually, there's never been an occupation by Israel, legally standing. There is no starvation looming over the Palestinian Arabs in Gaza. There is no two-state solution, so-called, or delusion, that is even remotely possible. And the reality is, it hasn't been remotely possible for a long, long time. There is no genocide. There is no apartheid. There is no ethnic cleansing. Now, I will say this, that with a little digging deep, and I'm going to be doing videos on these subjects as we go forward, there was ethnic cleansing of all the Jews in Palestine. There obviously has been genocides, pogroms, massacres over a period of 80 years. There have been massacres, no, more, 100 years, and pogroms of Jews. Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem, where Jews were the majority population back into the 1800s, perhaps even before that. The majority, they were ethnically cleansed. So this stuff, none of this stuff gets dealt with in this debate. And millions of people are walking away. And I'll tell you what, I think that many will walk away hearing the platitudes of Rabbani and Finkelstain, and because they set the debate, Finkelstain, and think that they actually know something new. Well, they didn't. So now, sorry to Lex Fridman. He blew this. I hope he does another one with maybe a new panel, maybe the same guys, but maybe prepared properly. Here I go again. I'll just go ahead and play Lex. I would say, I would like to correct that a little bit. It's a microcosm, but what it is a microcosm of the propaganda. That's really what came out here, and you'll see that. No, actually, I disagree again with Lex Fridman. Norman Finkelstein was a madman during this debate. He was so out of control. It was actually very discomforting to watch and embarrassing, in a sense for him. But there's a method to his madness. You just keep yelling and screaming and turning it back the direction you want, and the moderator allows you to do it, and so you control the debate. And that's a mistake if you want light and salt and truth to come out of an exchange like this. Okay, well, let me just, sorry, get this too. Okay, this is really hard to control. Okay. Okay, I'm going to tell you this in advance because this is the most crucial part of the entire debate. Right, what's happening in the next several minutes. After Norman finishes his opening presentation or monologue, Lex turns to the other two gentlemen across the table and says, Norman asked me if he could give a longer or more lengthy presentation in other words, to put it in context, whose context did Norman choose to put it into? A dispassionate, you will find he is not dispassionate. He is a partisan. But this happened, I think we can assume from what the reactions are, that the other two gentlemen, Destiny and Benny Morris, had no idea about this. They did not come prepared. What Norman was handed was the opening statement. So remember, there's no debate thesis. So now Norman is going to determine the thesis of the debate, and these guys aren't even ready for it. They have no idea this is about to happen. And he chooses very wisely if he wants to obscure, mislead, and obscure the truth. So here we go. I can't believe Lex did this. I have a feeling that if Lex is a nice guy, and I know nothing about him, if he's a fair person, then maybe Norman just manipulated him, or Moeen manipulated him. I can't imagine why he would do this deliberately. He begins saying this. He's saying that that after World War II, the British just decided to throw the Palestine issue into the laps of the UN. It's not that simple. Why is it not that simple? Because the reality is that they had, and I have much opprobrium for the British. I'm not happy with them at all. But nevertheless, they not only did the war drain them, they were facing horrendous crises. Many. Fuel, food. They were in huge trouble after the war. But it wasn't just that. What they had been facing from the Arabs that lived in the Mandate, and the leader, Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who was a collaborator and with Hitler and the Nazis, he had created a situation that had not been created in any other of the mandates. Not in Mesopotamia, now Iraq, not in Syria, look at Syria, not in Lebanon. No other of the or Transjordan, now Jordan. None of these other areas had the kind of organization by a strong man leader who was bringing people together, Arabs, to slaughter Jews from the early 1920s, 1920, 1921, slaughtering of women, children, rape, horrendous, to 36 through 39, one long intifada 1.0, I call it. It's the first real intifada, and it was a devastating period on the economy, on the families, on the Palestinian psyche and culture. The Palestinian Arab, not the Palestinian Jews, but the Arab-Palestinian economy was utterly devastated because of the actions of the Palestinian Arab leaders. Does that sound familiar to you? He killed hundreds, thousands of Arab Palestinians were killed, not by Jews, but by Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who is a collaborator with Adolf Hitler. The British, despite the fact that they were on the side of the Arabs, utterly, completely in Palestine, the mandate, they were on the side and encouraged and gave all help to the Arabs. And their desire, frankly, was to have just one Arab state and forget the whole mandate contract, which is what it was, a treaty, a legal, internationally valid and legal document that this land was supposed to be for the Jews. Not that Arabs would be pushed out, but the land was supposed to be a Jewish national home, a state for the Jewish people. We'll get to that. They had it. Why? Because of terrorism. Unrelenting slaughter. Slaughter of Arabs who were moderate, slaughter of Jews, slaughter of British forces, and then, well, I won't go into the rest of it between 39 and 47 now, but yeah, they had it. But it was first and foremost because the Arabs, when handed on another silver platter, a state that was essentially a travesty of justice to the Jews, they still refused to take that. They were given some, 80% of the land in 39, and they still rejected it because the goal was no Jews in the land of Israel. Okay, let me tell you what Norman's doing here. He has been given the permission to set the debate. He said, let's start in 1948, 47, 48. Why? Because the history of the mandate would utterly destroy, if you go back to 1917, 1919, 20, 23, or 22, 23. If you go back to these years, and then the intervening years before the British left their position as the mandate power, it would utterly devastate his position. But what he's preparing you for, the audience, and the millions that have seen this all just happened in 1948. The British decide to get out. There's two people that wanted the land. The Jews had just come in immigration. It just happened. This is all about 1945. It's about Hitler and Europe. And this entire state of Israel was founded because of the guilt of European nations over the genocidal slaughter of Jews in Nazi Germany, Poland, etc., and their ineffectualness and their unwillingness to have prevented that genocide. So, what do you see? If it starts there, then what does Rabbani say later? And this is like a normal, this is in every debate. Why should these poor little Palestinian Arabs pay the price for the barbarity, the genocide of the Germans and the rest of those who participated in Europe? We didn't do anything wrong. Why should we pay the price for this? So there's an answer to that, because all of that's baloney. But if you start in 1948, then you get to bypass all the international law that came before that, the Ottoman, Turkish, Muslim, Islamic Empire, the breaking of that empire up, the desire for Arabs to create, or Muslims to create, a new empire. the fact that there are Israelis, not Israelis, Jews, as isolated little pockets of submissive, humiliated, and oppressed Jews throughout millions of square miles that Arabs or Muslims owned and were sovereign over, and what the San Remo resolution did for many different reasons, long before Adolf Hitler, long before the Holocaust. They said, as we are breaking up into independent sovereign nation states so that the people of this massive region, 1,000,000 square miles, whatever it was, that there would be self-determination within this region. And that means you have to draw lines. And that means that you might have Iraq with Kurds in it. And you might have an Israel with Arabs in it. And you might have a Lebanon that was originally supposed to be a Christian nation, and which, unfortunately, the way they did it ended up being, Sunni, Shia, all kinds of Muslims. So there's minorities and majorities there. Syria had all kinds of Jews and Christians who later being slaughtered. But the point is, there's always a minority in all these areas. The only one who can't have be a minority is an Arab under the Jews, right? The breakup of this massive empire, the leaders of the League of Nations, all of the nations, which is a precursor to the UN, the 51 nations that made up that first League of Nations assembly, determined that one little sliver of land would have Jewish sovereignty, eventually Israeli sovereignty. One sliver of land. As a matter of fact, let me do something real quickly. I hope I don't mess anything up. Let me show you a map Sorry. Okay, see this map? Let me get rid of this real quick. This map is a map of the region. Here's another one. It's similar, but I'll just put it. Oh, no, that's not it. We'll just stick with this one. So the black is all the Arab, Turk, and Persian, etc. Muslim nations. This little white sliver here was what the League of Nations, which was the body that was preliminary to the United Nations, determined under law, international law, this land would become the nation state of the people of Israel, the Jewish people, a Jewish state. That is what the San Remo resolution determined. If you can remember that, and why is it? If you look around here, and I will show you at another time how many Jews were in all of these lands that they were expelled. There were pogroms. They were killing Jews. They were putting all of them in prison. And they fled all of these lands, these black lands, and went over here to the state of Israel. It wasn't just a European issue, but I wanted you to see that because I wanted you to see that what the main reason why Norman wants to talk about 1947, 48, 49, and not go to 1920, 1918, 15. Okay. Okay, he's going to talk about, the next thing you have to hear is, I'm just going to skip over it because it's so boring. He refers to Andrew Gromyko. the ambassador to the UN from Russia. Why he selected that one person to, like, on this long monologue, quote him from that period of time at the United Nations. There's so many important things that were said then. Because again, he's reaffirming, because of what Gromyko said, is that this was just done for the Jews. So it was imposed upon the Arabs because of the barbarity and the genocide of Europe. Untrue. That's a lie. But this is, the talking points have a chicken and an egg, an order of discussion. You have to start at a certain time, and you have to hit certain high points for them to obscure the truth of this whole conflict. There's so much history here, and it is so interesting, but he's not telling the history. So we're going to try to skip over that. Okay. Now, what he's just talked about is that, yes, the Arabs rejected it. But what he doesn't say is this. Instead of quoting the Russian ambassador saying that this is all because of the horrible atrocities against the Jews, so we'll go and send them off to Arabia, what he doesn't mention is this. Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, absolutely refused to allow the participation of Palestinian Arabs at the UN. He boycotted it. He said, all the land or nothing. The Arabs nations were formed into an UNSCOP, United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, Committee number 2. They brought forth a plan of their own. It was a ridiculous plan. It was basically, we need to have an Arab state, a Muslim Arab state, and the Jews can be pathetic, subjected minorities here as well as in all the other states. That's not much of a plan, but they dressed it up, put lipstick on the pig, and Haj Amin al-Husseini said, absolutely not. If you ever have someone, which they will later, say that he was a minor figure, a fringe figure, why are they doing that? Because he was a collaborator with Adolf Hitler, and they were bringing the gas chambers, literally, mobile gas chambers, to Palestine if they won the battle in, Tunisia, Libya, and Northern Africa. If they had not been thwarted by the British, then they would have rolled in the mobile gas chambers on trucks, and it was all planned out. But the thing to remember is the Arab states Arab League bowed to his authority, and they refused then to even support their own plan. So it was Arab rejectionism from the very beginning. Now they wish they could go back to 1947 and accept it. And boy, would they have been smart, because it wasn't a great deal for the Jews. And they could have destroyed the Jews by now. But they didn't. I think that was God's provision to hold them back. Like he hardened Pharaoh's heart. And so Pharaoh wouldn't accept what was clearly in his best interest and the best interests of his people. So you see Arabs from the 1920s, 30s, all the way to today for 100 years. Every decision being made counter to the best interest of themselves, their people. Only if you're a megalomaniac, narcissistic, authoritarian dictator, Jew hater, and Adolf Hitler lover would you ever think that what they were asking for was the best thing for their people, even for themselves. So I'm not going to go into the rest of this UN thing, but what you see is that Norman Finkelstein set the tone and the direction of it. Now it's going to go to Benny Morris. But Benny Morris has come to this thing because Benny Morris is not a debater. He's an academic, a scholar, and he stands up and he gives papers and he tells the same story of what happened in 1947 and 1948. Halfway, decades of history have already passed, the most important things. And he just walks through that as if he's having a few beers and peanuts and chips with his buddies at the local pub. He's not coming prepared for battle and war. Norman Finkelstein is. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I should have shown one thing here real quick. I got to get something with better controls. See, it just... Sorry. Okay. Firstly, I shouldn't have skipped over this before. I'm glad I came back. He's also setting this up to be the theme of the debate. He's going to take writings from Benny Morris from, I think, the 80s, and he's going to keep quoting it to the point where everybody in this group here is, I mean, just shocked and horrified that he keeps pounding on it. Finally, Lex, after the fifth or sixth time, says, that's enough. Well, he waited way too long before he said that. Benny's saying, I don't agree that that's what I meant. It's not even in my book this way. But Norman is going to keep repeating it. What's the lie? The lie is that the Israelis, Zionists, the men who founded Zionism or carried it out into place. And what is Zionism? It's a movement or the desire of the Jewish people. It's a special name for self-determination and establishing a sovereign state. That, if you talk about the Armenians and the Kurds and all that, they don't call theirs Zionism. Why do they call it Zionism? Because it's biblical. Because God says that this is their land. And so Zionism is a special term of art for Israeli self-determination, sovereign nationhood in their ancestral, ancient homeland, the homeland of their forefathers, where all of their kings, all of their armies, all of their lived and worked and did their warring and their protection of the people. All the feasts of Israel and Judah were celebrated there. The giving of commandments, the justice, alliances with Hiram, of Tyre, and their entire history. All of the prophets spoke in the land of Israel, here in the land that they want to call Palestine. We'll talk about that later. And so what he wants to say is that the Zionist, who just merely wanted to exercise their self-determination to have a nation state in their ancient homeland, drove all the Arabs out of Palestine. That, as I said before, and I don't know if my volume was correct at the time, was absolutely... Hello, by the way, I don't know if... Oh, hi. I need to make that a little bit larger in the future because that's a little bit too small. How are you? It's so good to see you, Barbara. And okay, so here's Avogadro center. I'm not sure who this is. It looks like, sorry. I wonder if I can fix this so that it's larger. I'll just read it right now. He says, whoever this person is, I'm sure the religious nonsense is going to go down great with a judge. What judge? Yeah, there is one judge that really ultimately matters. And by the way, the ICJ, I am going to show you the most amazing clip from the ICJ utterly destroying what Norman Finkelstein and Muin Rabbani say in this speech. It is amazing. I don't even think Steve Burnell knows about this clip because I haven't seen him say anything about this. Red herring. Good day, everyone. Norman, you are a boss. Okay, is that Norman here in the chat, or is that Norman Finkelstein? Is he one of your heroes? Melissa Dodd said no sound originally. Sorry about that, Melissa. I wonder if she left because of my incompetence. Barbara, I don't know what W&D analytics is. Oh, that's the thing that was supposed to be telling me that I had no audio sound. Sorry about that. I'm going to repeat my apologies a few more times. The excerpt I am listening to is incredible garbage. Thank you, Jackson Rip Holmes. Oh, wait a minute. Is it their excerpt or is it me? Thank you one way or the other. Let me know, Jackson, if you're still on, whether or not you were talking about them or me. I can take it. I have no fear of the pro-Nazi, Jew-hating, anti-Semitic, or more importantly than anything, because those people are nothing to me. What is, and if you come to God, that will change you. But that aside, this is not a show on evangelism or trying to bring people to realize that there is a God and he has a lot to say about the Jews. The dearly beloved of his soul, he calls them. Excuse me. The people that matter. Sorry. The people that matter, and this is why I'm doing this, are the people that don't know any better. You've seen the videos, right? You've seen the videos of the girls that came down from one college in New York to a protest at another college or went up. I can't remember who. And she's being asked, why are you here? What are you protesting? We're protesting to show our support for the Palestinian people. Well, what is because NYU, Columbia is doing that. Oh, and she says, I don't know what they're doing. She turns to her girlfriend. Why are we protesting? And her girlfriend said, I wish I was more educated. I don't know. But there's the side of hate and there's the side of ignorance. And I remember when I was 18, 19, 21, I really thought I was smart. And I was as dumb as the seat I'm sitting on or the rocks outside. I was really stupid. I didn't have an opinion about this, of course, because it wasn't on my radar screen. But I was dumb. And these young people are old enough, though. Let me tell you this. I just don't think that even though I was stupid, that I would be calling for the genocide of Jews. And taking the side of Hitler and the Nazis. I just don't think I would be. God forbid that I would. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's a center. Oh, contour. Sorry. Avigdor Avogadro. Sorry. Yeah, but there aren't 500,000 starving children. What Avogadro says is, do the 500,000 starving children matter? Which starving children is my question. That's what I would really like to know, because there are no starving children in. Let me get this. Oh, edit text. Let me get this a little bit larger here. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay, let's try that. Let's see if that works. No, it didn't work. All right, we'll fix that another time. So he asked, what about starving children? There are no starving children in Gaza. That is a complete fabrication. And what it is a testimony to the insincerity of the liberal left, the Jew-hating left, the revolutionaries that call out for death to America, these, and the UN, which is a thoroughly anti-Semitic organization. Why do I say there is no starvation? Well, let me tell you. They say, and I'm not going to bring up, I'm not going to actually go and read documents. I will do just like a short video just on this. But it's readily apparent out there. You don't even need me to tell you that there is no starvation in Gaza. I'm just shocked by so many people that literally do not do the research. Let me give you a hint about research. It's painful sometimes. What I will do is go in and search the term that is, search a question worded so that it's the opposite of my opinion. In this case, how many children have died of starvation in Gaza? Or how many are on the brink of how many food trucks have really gone in, I put it in a negative way. Go the opposite direction. Is there really starvation happening or looming in Gaza? I won't bore you with all the different ways you could do that. You most certainly can go to Twitter, YouTube, and many other social media channels and articles at reliable news organizations and actually find the truth. Let me give you a few factoids. Number one, there are more trucks that are going in to Gaza than there were October 6th and before that. So there are more trucks with food going into Gaza. So tell me, how is it that prior to October 7th, they had enough food? And yes, they did. But after October 7th, when it's up to double the amount of food that's going into Gaza, they are starving. Think about it. Those are facts. I literally wouldn't state them unless they were factually true, because I don't want to be like Norman and Moeen here. Number two, when they talk about pounds or weight of the food, of the a number of trucks even too, depending on over the period of time where you come in. The trucks prior to October 7th that were allowed to go in and out of Gaza carrying goods and food, water, or whatever, maybe not water. Those trucks were filled also with electronic dishwashers and maybe books, food, yes. They could be carrying even mechanical car parts, right? Lawnmowers, whatever. They would be electronic and mechanical parts and items for homes, for businesses. How does a bakery get their ovens in Gaza? They order it and it comes in on a truck. My point being, these trucks are filled virtually 100% with water, food, and medicines. So no, they're not bringing in lawnmowers. So when you see somebody giving you fake statistics that are fake to begin with, but say they say that 1,000 trucks went in, and before that was 1,500 trucks. Well, but the weight of food, there's no lawnmowers, there's no car parts, there's no dishwashers and laundry things, there's no kids' clothes, fancy pink dresses. None of that's coming in, or I would think very little of it is, but fresh fruits and vegetables, flour, water, oil, all of the necessities of life are coming in. So in one truck, instead of maybe 30% of it being food, it is 100% food. So in the weight, the number of trucks, they are so far surpassing what was sent into Gaza before October 7th. That is a lie. And ask yourself in all of these debates, why is it that someone needs to lie to prove their point? You will see lies here in this debate and many, many other debates. Why lie? Because your argument doesn't hold water. It's not strong. And I'm not saying that there's nothing that can be said on the other side that's true. I'm saying that the preponderance of it is untrue. It's a lie. Let's just talk about one item of food. What did Jesus do when he was with his disciples? They broke bread, because the bread is the staff of life. We all know this. We do not eat meat. We do not need to eat meat. We don't need to have lamb chops. We don't need to have chickens. We need to have protein, beans, in combination with other kinds of nutrients, bread, water. You can survive a great deal of time, and that's not all that they have, by the way. They have fruits and vegetable stalls that are filled to the brim with candies, desserts for Ramadan, all kinds of fruits, all kinds of vegetables, massive amounts of flour. Let me show you a little video real quickly here. I don't want to mess up. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to show it to you because I'm afraid that this will go back to the beginning, and I don't want to do that with this video. If I have seen videos coming out of Gaza, one bakery produces 650,000 loaves, huge loaves of pita bread, flatbread, every single day. There are 23 to 26 bakeries in Gaza working today. They are producing some 3 million loaves of bread a day. And that's beside all of the rest. So don't tell me they're starving. And also, I would ask you to do this. Find me the pictures, especially the videos, of starving children that are being held by someone date stamped today, because I have seen dozens of examples of children from Yemen from 5 years ago, from Syria 10 years ago, being portrayed as starving children in Gaza. No one's starving. Sorry, Avogadro, sorry, Mr. Contour. How about using your common sense? Okay, you know what? He is bringing up some really good bad points. How about the destruction of all aspects of civil life, farms, agricultural lands, bakeries, etc.? You know what? I invite you to come back, because this is not my last rodeo here, because this is what I'm focusing on, is this debate. And I'm going to go through every debate and every soundbite, every clip, and bring these questions back. But I will say this. Firstly, this is called war. And the Palestinian Arabs in Gaza have to take some responsibility. There is, on one hand, the fact that their government is like the government of Stalin, of Hitler, of Pol Pot, of Mao, of the Iranian Republic, the Republic of Iran, Syria. Yeah, it is horrible that they have fascistic, authoritarian, communist, Marxist governments that destroy the people for their own ends. But they need to rise up and they need to overturn what they did themselves. They voted these men into office. These men slaughtered 1,000 representatives of Fatah and the PA back in 2007. That's when the blockade began. And you know what? I just don't recall anybody saying when Pearl Harbor was hit, don't go to Japan, don't enter the war, President Roosevelt, because God forbid the people that are there that they should actually suffer in any way for their government. It's war. And as I said, not to be cliche, but because it is actually true, that war is hell. And I don't wish this upon the Palestinian people. It's so horrible that what they have to deal with, the innocent ones, those that are not innocent, I'm very happy for them to suffer punishment. It is a culture of child abuse. These children are abused. They're recruited at very, very young age in their childhood. They are perverted in their minds. They are taught to love knives and stones and to kill Jews. They say, the land is ours and the Jews are our dogs. That's in Arabic, one of the things that little 3-year-olds learn to say in Arabic. The land is all ours and the Jews are our dogs. And you know what? There's so many things here. The destruction of water infrastructure leading to no potable water. Look, when the Jews left there, they left it with water and pipes and sprinkler systems in all of their farming. And the Arabs broke it up and made them into rockets, as you probably already know. Have you sent a letter to your representative and asked them to say shame on you, Egypt, and to bring international pressure upon the irresponsible and heartless Egyptian Arab Muslim country for not opening its borders to refugees, for not making sure that water and electricity. Do you know that Egypt used to send electricity into Gaza? Why is it that the Jews that are having 31,000 rockets shot into their land, 31,000, are then supposed to say, oh, gee, we got to get some more electricity over to Gaza? 31,000. After 5, we would be mobilized in the United States, and whoever was doing that would never do it again. And they have allowed 31,000 rockets to come into Israel for 20 years, since 2001. That's not counting other terrorism. That's just rockets from Hamas or Gaza before Hamas, and not accounting the mortars, which are many times that amount. Egypt is responsible. The Arab League is responsible. The UN is responsible. And Hamas is responsible. The billions of dollars, the 3 top leaders of Hamas have $11 billion to their name in private bank accounts. That's where the infrastructure is for Gaza. And also the infrastructure is 20 feet to 200 feet below the surface in terror tunnels to be used for invading Israel and for kidnapping Israeli men, women, children, and soldiers. 19, 18-year-old soldiers that they taken hostage. So, Avogdro, I'm not going to continue. I would go through your whole gigantic list. Um, Alex says, but it's just too much for today. Alec, thank you. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Absolutely. Let's continue on with Norman. And I will speed up at some point here. Sorry. Okay, the Arabs rejected everything for decades, so therefore Norman comes out and says, I conclude that neither side, remember, we have to, this is another tactic of his side. You know, Israel is, what about Israel? Why didn't they do this? Or it's, both sides need to stop the violence. Both sides need to stop the violence. Israel's just defending itself now. The violence was started by Hamas. Hamas should surrender unconditionally. But what he's going to do is make this entire debate about the lie that 7.5 million Arabs were pushed out by Israel in the so-called Nakba. Okay, I wanted you to hear that. Norman asked that he make a lengthy statement in the beginning. Did these guys know about this? No. So this, what Norman just did, all of the red herrings and the stupid arguments that are framed, leaving out most of the context and all of the history, the persons involved, all of the crucial issues. Lex just said Norman asked. Did Lex email out to the rest of the guys, hey, look, Norman is asked to make a lengthy statement at the beginning. I would like you all to have a prepared statement for the beginning as well. You all will have exactly 6 minutes. And then they would have prepared. Like I said, Benny looks like he's here to have a colloquium or a symposium in a university or a couple of beers at the pub. Okay. Okay. All that's happening here is that Benny is going through the regimentation of the 1948 war, which is not where what we should be talking about. So I'm going to go to Rabbani, excuse me, and see what he has to say. Benny did not argue his point. Good point. Okay. I have, oops, I have a comment here. I better move myself over so that if it's possible to see these comments, I'm trying to get it so it's bigger. Snowstorm is an informed kitty. Um, let's see. Snowstorm is saying, I'll read it to you, it's just too small on the screen. Why don't people ever refer to the 1998 interview given to the BBC by Hazem Nusabi? Do people not know about this? There are a lot of those kinds of interviews out there, Snowstorm, and I agree with you 100%. These are the things, and I'm going to be bringing those on this channel in my little show here. Nusaibeh completely disproves the idea of the Nakba. He admits they chose to propagandize around Deir Yassin to pull neighboring countries in to the war and inadvertently scared their own people. I have a bunch of videos that I'm clipping to put together. Maybe you could put the link into the chat if that's possible, because I want to see if that's one of the ones that I have. For some reason, I'm not hearing Benny Morris. He speaks very softly. I'll try to put now the volume's up as high as it can be. Sorry. Thank you, Snowstorm. I would give you a chocolate chip cookie or a happy face or something like that for jumping into this. By the way, I have 1 thumbs down and 6 thumbs up. I feel very happy. On my way to have 1 million subscribers here. I'm not sure if I missed anybody else. Yeah, red herring. Okay. Snowstorm, why don't you email that to me or put it up on our X account or, okay, I'll just go back and pull it out myself. I want to double check because I'm putting together a video reel of all the interviews of the people that were there in 1948, 47, when the Arabs left because they were afraid, and the Jews couldn't leave because it was their land and they couldn't abandon it. So all the Jews stayed. The Arabs always, I guess it was kind of a tradition, when there was a problem, then they leave and go to neighboring lands. And there was great fear, of course. Why wouldn't there be? It's a war. The rich and powerful, even government individuals who held office on councils, etc., they skedaddled. They were out of there in 1947, even before the partition proposal by the UN. They took their women, their wives, and their children, and they went off to Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, wherever, Egypt. Lot went to Egypt, and they were gone. What happens to a community of, the greatest proportion of the people were laborers, uneducated at that time in the land? Their leaders are gone. They've abandoned them. And so, and they also, even I have testimony that because they were afraid the Jews remember all the slaughters, like the slaughter of Hebron, the slaughters of Safed, where they raped women, where they cut off children's heads and smashed their skulls into maybe on the ground or maybe into a wall, killed so many people. And I think it was actually Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, who said, well, my parents were afraid that the Jews would take revenge on what the Arabs had done to them. Safed, there was a slaughterhouse. And so they ran, that was probably a wise thing to do, to run, to escape. But they thought they were coming back because they had been promised by their rulers, by their leaders, that we are going to slaughter the Jews. Oh, by the way, something you probably don't know, and I'll bring quotes for these things sometime in the future, but they were also promised by, one is Azam Pasha, the Secretary General of the Arab League. He said there will be much booty. There is more than one quote from Arabs stating that they can loot, take booty, spoil when the Jews are killed or driven out. And there was one report, it was two reporters talking, and one reporter who wrote a book on the war, he was there in Jerusalem, very interesting book. And he was hanging out with the Arabs first. He wanted to get both sides, and he had good friends that he developed with the Arabs, so he didn't hate Arabs, okay? And he said he got one report from one of the journalists that an Arab had just been killed because there was a confrontation as to who was going to get the spoils of a particular Jew's land or possessions. So they were fighting April 14th or May 14th, and going around and choosing the lands, the homes, the businesses, maybe the cars, the donkeys, the horses, whatever, that they were going to take when the Jews were all killed. By the way, Moeen and Norman, they're not going to mention any of these little factoids. So yeah, thank you, Snowstorm. And I am going to look up that particular video. There's a bunch of them. See, this is where, Norman, you're going to see, is going to go like ballistic soon. He's like a nutcase, right? Or as the British say, a nutter. Moeen, he just very quietly, everything he does, he's very, very quiet. He is such a liar. I'm sorry. He is a liar and a propagandist and a manipulator. He just stated what made Zionism unique is that their desire or its goal of supremacy, and he used some other words, I won't go back and remember what it was. That's just so weird. Do maybe college students who are inexperienced, uneducated, they know a lot about queer studies and feminist studies and DEI, but they don't know history. They don't know political science or, historical political science. They don't know these things. So they hear it and they believe that. He's a liar. In Iraq, in Iran, in Jordan, they passed laws that if it was a capital offense for a Jew to buy land or to have land sold to him, a death penalty offense. Would Moeen like to? Okay, so there'll be something he pulls out of a hat that rationalizes to the shock of everybody listening why the PLO, the PA, Palestine Authority, Palestine Liberation, Jordan, make it a capital offense for any Arab to sell any Jew land. You get killed. And by the way, guess what? That sentence has been carried out over and over and over again. That's not supremacy. Additionally, in Jordan, for instance, who can be, and Palestine is the same thing too. By the way, Jordan is the Palestine Arab state. Jordan took 77%, or was given 77% of the land of the Palestine Mandate to the Hashemite king Abdullah. And they got 77% of the mandate. And all of Jordan was once part of the Palestine Mandate. There's debates and arguments about that, but nevertheless, to be a citizen, you cannot be a Jew. It's in the negatory, if that's a word. It's a negation. Anyone can be a citizen of Jordan unless they're a Jew. Or I think in Palestine, I don't have this memorized, but it's you must be born of an Arab male, citizen of Palestine. So you can't be a citizen unless you're an Arab born of a male. So that dissuades women from marrying non-Arab Palestinians in Gaza or anywhere else, of course. That controls their reproduction and their choice of mate, etc., because they want their children to be citizens. But you cannot, if you're a Jew, you can't be a citizen. By the way, before the War of 47 and the War of 48, there were all kinds of lands owned by Jews in the area that Jordan came to occupy when they invaded illegally the state of Israel. What was going to happen to them? They'd be expelled, their land confiscated, they may be killed, but it would be Judenrein. That means empty of Jews. But the Jews, as a contrast, chose to agree to a state that had 45-ish% Arab Muslims and Arab Christians as a population. So who is calling for supremacy? In Saudi Arabia, how many Jewish citizens are there in Mecca? Jews can't even step into Mecca or Medina. Let me pull up I can't, I'm not sure if I can find it here, but density of Gaza. Okay, here it is. Maybe that'll come over here. Let me do this. I hope this doesn't mess this up. Okay. Will it ever be enough is what I'm asking. 22 Arab League states on 5 million square miles. 24 Arabic language is the official language. 25 plus Islam is the official religion. 49 Islamic majority states. 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Why do you think the UN is so anti-Semitic? They have an immediate majority in their opinion, all Arab and Muslim states. Contrast that with there's one Jewish state. It's a little more than this, 9,878 miles if you include Judea and Samaria. It's like 10, 11,000. One Hebrew-speaking majority state, one Jewish majority state, and 0 states that have Judaism as the official religion. You just look at that and think about, why is it that Moeen feels so comfortable lying about what he just said? He said, Zionism is so unique in that it insists on supremacy. Let me ask you a question. When the Kurds, who were denied their state, which is a travesty of history, and the Armenians at the time were denied their state after the genocides of the Turk Muslims, of the Christian Armenians, of over 1 million people, rapes, mass rapes, beheadings, slaughters unimaginable, starvation to death, taking children for slaves and women for sex slaves. Anyway, if the Armenians were able to get a state, or the Kurds, would the Kurds have said, oh, and it'll be all right if 40, 50, 60% of our new Kurdish state is not Kurdish? They're Muslim. They're Middle Eastern Muslim. But would they actually want, say, 60% Shiite Persians, or Sunni or Shiite Iraqis? No. And why? Would it be because, no, well, of course, Moeen wouldn't care, and no one would care if they demanded majority status. Moeen only cares because it's Jews. And Jews are never allowed to be in a majority status where they are the authority in the government, and have minorities within the population. So that's what Moeen just did here. Makes me sick. It's just horrendous. I can't wait till Stephen Destiny gets up. This is like so nuts. What passed for the international community? It was the international community. Just real quick point. There are so many photos of Hajime al-Husseini. Oh, I should have gotten out photos of him touring the model gassing concentration or death camp called Station Z. They only found the photos of this in 2017. But there was evidence of it, but people were afraid, to use evidence about his Nazi, not just connections. There was deep millions of dollars. Hitler financed the 36 to 39 slaughters and rebellion that destroyed Arab Palestinian society. Hitler paid for that. And what he's talking about is, like I said before, so I won't go over it, is this man saluting in his Sieg Heil salute, who completely bought into the Nazi genocide. And they had plans to bring it to Palestine and kill all the Jews after they finished with Egypt. Egypt, they were going to take care of the Jews there first, North Africa. And then they were headed straight through the Sinai up into Palestine. Okay. The amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of effort, the amount of the propaganda that Haj Amin al-Husseini, the acknowledged, revered leader of the Arab Palestinians and acknowledged by all the Arab states surrounding, the amount of bandwidth and resources that went into his support of Hitler's final solution. And he talks about the solution. He asks him to be allowed to learn and bring that solution to Palestine. So this is not a European problem, and this is him playing games again. This is Haj Amin al-Husseini. The Nakba was only inevitable because what caused the Nakba? The fake Nakba, because the Nakba was not the expulsion of Arab Palestinians. The Nakba was that the Arab militias that started the civil war, the very next morning or that evening after the UN partition plan was offered up and voted on, they started killing Jews. The plan was to slaughter all the Jews, take the loot, the booty, etc. The failure of slaughtering all the Jews is the catastrophe. That's how it was defined for the first decade or so. And then they started using it as a propaganda term to be the catastrophe is the victims being forced from the state. That was not the Nakba. But they're so, you know what? They're so diabolically brilliant in being able to lie and massage the truth. And this is what you have to get used to. Whenever you hear something, assume that you have to check it. Check all of your assumptions should be checked, because I could literally go through and comment about every sentence uttered in this debate of how it's manipulative or a flat out lie. He says that the amount of land that was given to the Jews was unfair. Well, remember, the Jews had 45% of their population was still going to be Arab. But I will let you in on a little known secret too. Well, some people clearly know it. You know what? I'm trying to come up with the best map here. I should have had a different one, I think. Let me look at here. That the reason there was not a majority of Jews in the land in 1948 is because the British artificially and illegally, against international law, prevented them from immigrating into the land of Israel. But they also allowed massive hundreds of thousands of illegal Arab immigration, not just Arab, but Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, all of these states, thousands upon thousands. Why? Because the Jews made the land prosperous. Do you know that in the land of Palestine, or the state of Israel, during the mandate of Palestine, that Arabs that were living in predominantly Arab areas were selling off their homes and migrating to the coast where the predominant Jews population was. Why? Because that's where the jobs were going. They weren't there protecting the, Judea and Samaria as these are Arab lands. No, I'm selling this or I'm leaving, because most Arabs did not own their own property. That's another lie of the Nakba. Most people did not own their property. It was a feudal system. These people were working the land of a rich effendi living in Syria or Lebanon or Egypt, wherever. Feudal system entirely in the Ottoman Empire. They would just, I'm out of here. If I do have land, I'm selling it. I'm going into Tel Aviv, and I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to buy a house for my family, and we're going to be better off. That's what was happening. The population in the Arab cities were going down because they were moving into the Jewish areas of high Jewish population, those areas. So let me see if I can find that map. I'm so mad at myself that these maps aren't here. The maps of Israel show this, that the land ownership was in the hands of the state. For instance, here is one. Here is one. Let me just go up here like this. One graph. It's hard to get documentation of this stuff. It's really hard to do. Okay. So it depends on the particular date, etc. But when the Ottoman Empire was still in existence, it was feudal. The emperor, or the caliph, the king, owned the land. If it was untilled, if it was not built upon, which is the vast majority of the lands, it was stayed or went back to the state. It was a very complex thing, and it changed many times over the course of 400 years. But if this diagram here will show you this. In 1948, after the Arabs fled in fear, the Arab leaders commanded them to leave, and the small percentage of people who left because the IDF or the Haganah pushed them out. And there's a strategic reason, an absolutely necessary reason, that small percentage was expelled from their land. Maybe, 12%, 15% was actually done by the Haganah. But this here shows the green Arab-owned lands once the state of Israel was, once the war was over. This is the state of, during the state of Israel, once the wars with all the Arab League was over, and the armistice lines were the lines that actually we still see today. This green section is what was Arab-owned lands. The whites, and I still want to verify this, is why I haven't posted this, is Arab-owned lands that were vacated. The light blue is Jewish-owned lands by individuals and perhaps by entities as well. And then the very large section that comes out to 71.2% was the lands owned by the state. Well, when the Ottoman Muslim Turks were the empire, they owned this blue land here. When the British took over the mandate and the government in this interim period before the State of Israel, they took over those domains were under their authority, naturally. So they could give them away, they could sell them, they could utilize them for public works. But that blue section there was state-owned land or state domain lands by the Ottoman Empire. And then it transferred to the British when the British took up the temporary trusteeship for the land for the Jewish people. And then once the Jewish people declared independence, that 71.2% was the property of Israel, the nation of Israel, the government of Israel. So when you see these ridiculous maps that claim that Arab land was taken from, lands belonged to Arabs and it was taken from Arabs, no, it wasn't. It was state lands, it was Turk lands, and no Arab owned those lands. And they became Jewish lands for the Jewish state of Israel. Okay, I know this is a long debate. We will not get through very much of it. Sorry. Oops, hold on. I'm on the wrong place here. Okay, what he's saying here is, real quickly, is the United Nations has changed. It used to be, France, Great Britain, Russia, Japan, America, in the UN, these major states that were ostensibly trying to become democratic and civilized and that were trying to be decolonized. Absolutely an important point in history that all the colonies in the Middle East were always non-Christian, Arab, Muslim, Zoroastrian, Roman, pagan, all of these colonial empires up until like France and England. I'm trying to think of Spain and Portugal. Sorry. Yeah, they became empires too. Let me tell you why. Because that's how the world worked. So Babylonia ruled over the land of Israel, all the lands of the Middle East, Persia, whatever, the Persian Empire, the Assyrian Empire, the Syrian Empire, the Hittite Empire, the Egyptian Empire. Mr. Rabbani here will give a pass and say, oh, and the Arab empires, the half a dozen Arab empires that slaughtered, invaded, took control of, dominated, occupied, taxed, colonized, and subdued the populations. Do you know Egypt wasn't an Arabic state? Syria wasn't Arabic. Lebanon wasn't an Arab state. Morocco wasn't an Arab state. Sudan certainly wasn't an Arab state. How did all these states become Arab states? Well, they're Arabic speaking because they're overlords that invaded, occupied, suppressed, oppressed, repressed the population, had a system of Arabization. You had to learn Arabic, and therefore the Berbers stopped speaking their language, the Egyptians stopped speaking theirs, the Lebanese, the Syrians, all of Persia for some time. I believe, and do some research on this, lost their language. Their literature was gone. And somehow they recovered it because they were a great culture when the Arabs invaded and took over and made them all Muslim Arabs. But the point is, it's okay that we have Arab colonialism and Islamic colonialism and empire. It's just not okay if the Jews want a little state or if the British have an empire. And I'm glad empires are gone. But that's, the Middle East wants empires. They definitely want empires. It's jockeying for who gets to run the empire is what they care about. Nasser wanted an empire. Abdullah wanted an empire. Faisal wanted an empire. Hussein wanted an empire. They all want empires. They just don't want the other guy to be the one that rules the empire. That's why they can't get together in any kind of significant unity, because they really are all at each other's throats, they're envious, covetous, and want more, even though they can't handle what they've got. And to look at the land of Jews, they used to call it the land of Jews. Benny Morris, I learned that from the Arabs did, the Muslims. The land of the Jews. They called Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, the land of the Jews. By the way, there are a lot of people, Arabs, that really would like to have peace and prosperity. And, truly our prayers should be for those who are being subjected to the envious, covetous, proud, maniacal leadership of these states. The dishonest and the manipulative. Oh, Sam Hassanian. I wish I could make this font on this larger, because I can't easily read it, and I don't want to do my glasses back and forth. So, Sam, are you Iranian or Iranian? When I'm listening to Jews and Arabs, I start calling people Iranian, Persian, Samaria, Iraq. How can the Jews be colonial when they are indigenous? Oh, thank you, Snowstorm, because I was trying to remember to say that. When he said the indigenous people, we used to say when we were kids, gag me with a spoon. So embarrassing. Are you nuts? Are you still trying that old bait and switch? Oh my goodness. Let me go back to me by myself here for a minute, because I have so many more items up here that I might be able to find. The languages, I'm looking for, here it is. Yes. Okay, did that go in right? Oops, yeah, it did. Oh, I'll just turn it on. There we go. So, see these languages here? I typed this up, made it into a little graph for you. These languages are the languages of the Muslims, and I'm doing air quotes here. Can you see my fingers? Arabs in 1931 mandate Palestine. I read the report. I've got them on my documents. I have so many things I would like to. How do I do this? I would like to make for you so that I could upload it on the site and you could download it and have it as a little cheat sheet. Okay, I'm going to read these. I am going to read these out really quickly. Okay. The Arabs, Muslims, and it could be Christians too, spoke Arabic, Albanian, Bosnian, English, French, German, Greek, Gypsy, Portuguese, Spanish, Turkish, Circassian, Takrurian, was one I had never heard of. Kurdish, Russian, Persian, Afghan, Hindustan, and other Indian dialects. There's too many to note. Javanese, Chinese, and Sudanese. Why did Arabs speak all these languages? Because they were not from the land of Israel. They weren't from the land of Israel because they were actually from China, Egypt, Syria, Iraq. They were Circassians, Bosnians, Albanians. Massive. And let me give you a quote here. I keep clicking on this and I need to just click the eyeball. The Jews point with pride to the fact that over 500,000 Arabs in the 12 years between 1932 to 1944 came into Palestine to take advantage of living conditions existing in no other Arab state. Robert F. Kennedy, June 3rd, 1948. He was later assassinated by a Palestinian terrorist. Yeah, 20 years later. Wait a minute, did he say that in 48? I don't know if that date's correct. Maybe it is. But in June 3rd, 4th, or 5th, can't remember, 1968, he was assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan, who was a Palestinian, whose stated reason for shooting or attempting, there's supposedly some collusion with another party, but Sirhan Sirhan said no. But nevertheless, his parents had moved from Palestine when he was about 15. He was born in 1948, I think. Too many dates. Anyway, he liked Robert Kennedy, but once Robert Kennedy announced that he was going to send 50 Phantom jets to Israel in 1968, a year after all those Arab armies tried to drive all the Jews into the sea and kill them and destroy the state of Israel, he decided he had to kill them. He could not live unless he could kill Robert F. Kennedy. That's the first known or recognized Arab-Palestinian terror or assassination or violence of maybe any kind in American history. Robert F. Kennedy, who was a humanitarian and was a man who fought for the minorities, the downtrodden, the oppressed, the poor. But he believed in Israel, and he believed we needed to support Israel for a lot of reasons, too much to go into now. So, sure, what is Arab Palestinian to do? They're forced into it. Robert Kennedy decided to give 50 fighter jets to Israel. What would any sane Palestinian Arab do? Go out, buy a gun, buy some ammo, practice at the shooting range, then head on over to where he was speaking and shoot 8 shots out of his 8 bullet clip. And that's a deeper story because there's all kinds of controversy. But he's in prison still today. He wasn't executed because California overturned the death penalty. But the reality is that he kind of admits, it's weird. I'll show you some interviews with him. Palestinian violence. Absolutely. Yeah. Snowstorm says, I didn't know that. My husband first told me about that. You know, let me tell you something. I'm going to do a little episode or a live stream about this. This kafia of shame was my husband's grandfather. And he would be so ashamed. His grandfather and his grandmother met here. And one was from Syria and one was from Lebanon. That's how I get it. It's a little bit obscure because, unfortunately, there's not all that much documentation left. I have an incredible picture of him that I will show you. Anyway, I'll bring it up right now. But he would be so ashamed. They were Christians, and he was so handsome and so wonderful. And come on. I get everything all organized, and it's still hard. I have something in here about Joseph's grandfather, and I can't find it. Okay, this was his keffiyeh. I would never let my husband wear this now because, like I said, it is a mark of shame for us. And Joseph is, of course, my husband was a revolutionary. He used to get every underground newspaper. He used to get Yasser Arafat's newsletter. Yes, Yasser Arafat had a PLO newsletter, and my husband, the revolutionary, when he was a little kid, actually took that that particular monthly, or I doubt it was a weekly. Anyway, can't find it. So I will show it to you another time. He was drop dead gorgeous, and like my husband. And he wanted to come to America to raise Arabian horses, which he did not end up doing. Okay. Oh, here it is. I'm going to go ahead and put this puppy up here. That's my husband's grandfather. Hold on, let me see if I can get it to be a little bit, trying to get it so that it's supposed to, oh, there we go. There we go. Is he handsome or what? So he came from Syria, Lebanon, and my husband's grandmother came from the other, and they met each other here. And I don't know. I just felt like that connection. I'm Irish, Swedish, big deal. My husband is a Zionist. And like so many Arabs in Israel, they are Zionists too. And Arabs are being slaughtered by the Arab Muslim Gazans, Hamas, and they're being killed constantly. They were killed on October 7th. Just the other day, I could pull up a picture, but this every single day I get another Arab Israeli, a picture of him on my Telegram thread of being slaughtered, being killed. They're either in the police or the military, etc. This is not about a land that has only Jews and it's supreme. This Jewish supremacy. This is what Rabbani was referring to, which just makes me sick because he knows it's a lie. If he thought it was true, that's fine, but he knows he's being a liar. So there is no supremacy other than in the Arab world and the Muslim world. Yes, of course, Jews want to be the majority. Wouldn't you? If China invaded America next year, or this year, because they want to do it before Biden's out, they invaded, and then they said to all of us supplicants, we are importing 20 million, or no, 100 million Chinese soldiers. Would we be happy? Because in no time at all, America would be Chinese, and everything about our culture would be wiped out. The diverse American culture would be wiped out, as you know. So yeah, we want to protect our culture. The Jews wanted to protect their culture. And yes, they wanted to be a majority. That did not mean that they caused a Nakba, which they did not. The so-called, the no Nakba is what I actually call it. Okay, I'm going to skip. Some of this is, I can't wait for Stephen Burnell to speak. Okay, let me just say this about something that Moyne just said. He said that it's understandable they had no other choice. They could not accept this. Why should they accept it? Why shouldn't they accept it? Syria was given to the Arabs. There was no such thing as a Palestine state. There was no king of Palestine. There is no history book about the state of Palestine. There's no history there because it is a precinct or a district of a massive empire called the Ottoman Empire. And once the empire had been, the Umayyad Empire and the Fatimid empires, and they all fought with each other. They all assassinated and killed each other. There was the Umayyad Empire. They all slaughtered each other. They went up into Spain. Hey, that's okay that you invade Spain, Arabize it, subject the Spanish Europeans. That was okay. Finally, it took 750 years to get the Muslims out of Spain, which the Muslims still think they own. That's all okay. These empires, one after the other, replacing, some would be bigger, some would be other. By the way, can you name me which empire chose Jerusalem as its seat of government? Think about it. Tell me which of the Muslim empires over a course of, about 1,100 years, because there was Christian kingdom of Jerusalem in there too. Okay. Anybody know which empire, Muslim empire, chose Jerusalem for its seat of government, its capital? Zero. As a matter of fact, it was Damascus, it was Baghdad, I believe Cairo or Alexandria. I'm not sure about that, but there were a lot of Egyptian Mamluk rulers of Islamic empires. So I can't remember that, and the Berbers, but never once did someone say, the Holy Land. This is our ancient Arab, Muslim Holy Land, and therefore this will be my capital. They couldn't care less. They wanted to be in Damascus. They wanted to be in Babylon. They did not care about Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, not one city today, there's one city in all of the land of Israel that the Arabs actually created, cleared some land and built a new city, Ramla. Every other city, Beersheba, Hebron, they may change the names of it, but every other city, Jaffa, Yaffo, you know this if you're Christian, every single city was a Jewish city that they came in and took over and renamed. So how is it that the Jewish city that came first, that was renamed by the Arabs, how could the Arabs be the indigenous people? And the Jews have thousands of years worth of artifacts. That's why the Arabs teach in their schools that the Jews manufacture artifacts and that they bury it in the ground and dig it up. They actually teach that in the PA schools and Gaza schools. Jerusalem snowstorm says Jerusalem's mentioned 0 times in the Quran. Absolutely. There's no word. Now, in English translations, maybe somebody fakes it for political deviousness, but never mentioned. Jerusalem is never mentioned in the Quran. It's mentioned hundreds, maybe 700, 800, 900 times. I can't remember the last count the last time I looked. But Jerusalem is the seat of God's government. He says he will be there forever. He has chosen it as his dwelling place forever, from the Psalms and from many other places. And of course, he's chosen his people, Israel, the children of Israel, Jacob, to be the inheritors of the covenants, the promises. This is Apostle Paul. Covenants, promises, the land, the adoption. I'm just thinking from Romans chapter 9. The adoption, the promises, the covenants, the land, the vows, the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 patriarchs, and the Messiah, all coming through the Jews. So yeah, and the giving of the Torah and the service of the temple. Yeah, it's never mentioned. Muhammad never went to Jerusalem. There is no reason that a Muslim can count Jerusalem as one of their holy cities. It would be like French people to look at Jerusalem, French Christians, and say it's one of their holy cities. What they have to say is something like, it's the holy cities of Judaism and Christianity. It is the land of the Jews. It is their state, but it is holy to me. But they should not have authority and be able to say that we are going to take this as our capital, like the Muslims do, because it's our holy city. It's really not holy to the Arabs, the Muslims. But, that's kind of hard to discuss because they pretend. The word Muhammad never went to Jerusalem. And it's not holy in Islam. Okay, let's watch a little bit more of this. That's right.
I never hear about the multiple times that Arabs rejected partition, rejected living with Jews, rejected any sort of state that would have even had any sort of Jewish exclusivity. It's funny because it was brought up before that the partition plan was unfair, and that's why the Arabs rejected it. Is that they rejected it because it was unfair, because of the amount of land that Jews were given, and not just due to the fact that Jews were given land at all. As though a 30% partition or a 25% partition would have been accepted. But I don't think that was the reality of the circumstances. I feel like most of the other stuff has been said, but I noticed that whenever people talk about 48 or the years preceding 48, I think the worst thing that happens is there's a cherry picking of the facts. Basically, all of the blame is ascribed to this built-in idea of Zionism that because of a handful of quotes or because of an ideology, we can say that transfer or population expulsion or basically the mandate of all of these Arabs being kicked off the land was always going to happen. When I think there's a refusal sometimes as well to acknowledge that regardless of the ideas of some of the Zionist leaders, there is a political, social, and military reality on the ground that they're forced to contend with. And unfortunately, the Arabs, because of their inability to engage in diplomacy and only to use tools of war to try to negotiate everything going on in mandatory Palestine, basically always gave the Jews a reason or an excuse to fight and acquire land through that way because of their refusal to negotiate on anything else, whether it was the partition plan of 47, whether it was the same peace conference afterwards where Israel even offered to annex Gaza in 51, where they offered to take in 100,000 refugees. Every single deal is just rejected out of hand because the Arabs don't want a Jewish state anywhere in this region of the world.
Okay, stop. Firstly, he comes out to debate. the winner of this entire thing, because, Norman got this heavy advantage given to him. Before the debate ever came, you get to make a 5 or 10 minute prepared statement, and you're going to set the tone, the subject of the debate, and which you'll keep on doing throughout the rest of the debate. And then Benny is basically asked, well, do you want to comment about some of the things Norm said? Well, why? Benny should have come out with a full-blown, hard-hitting, and he should have actually been making a point, which is what he never does. Sorry, Benny, you never make a point. You're never persuading or arguing. And if I had one bit of advice to give you, and obviously you are, much more, well, why should I give you advice? It's worth a nickel, right? Maybe not even that much. But I'll put it to you this way. If you want to engage in this, stop just sitting on the fence because you're that kind of academic, which I respect, that always couches everything in qualifying statements. Well, yes, that's true, but you have to remember blah, blah, blah. Then don't do debates, because all you're doing is at the pub throwing back a few beers and eating some peanuts and going at it with your friends, debating, the scores, debating the election, debating the history of Palestine mandate and the land of Israel. This is not a debate, what he did. But Stephen Burnell came out, and he was actually, if this was allowed to, okay, normally you come out with the statements in a debate, and those 4 statements, say they takes up like 40 minutes, that's where you're debating the rest of the time. That's what should have happened. But instead, they're going to be going everywhere. And every time you start to think you're going to get to understand something, Norman or Moeen will take it off in another direction. Oh, and they keep coming back, Norman does, to accuse Benny. He keeps reading the same quote over and over and over and over again. The Benny says that's not what it means. Steve Burnell is the winner here because he came out, made significant statements, and I'm not even going to go over them because they were perfect in every way. And he nailed it. The Arabs are in the place that they are today without a state after how many wars, how many thousands dying as terrorists, how many wasted minds, how many wasted futures because of Arab rejectionism. And like he's saying, the bizarre thing, and this is a guy who knew nothing about this before October 7th, and he nailed it. And the grown-ups around the table, he's grown up, of course, but should learn a little bit of something from him. Now, I feel badly. Well, it's only 7:30. I can keep going. Let me see about comments from Snowstorm. I have 10 thumbs up, guys. I'm chugging along here. Only 1 thumbs down. Appreciate that. Snowstorm says, if the British hadn't allowed all the Arab economic migration and the Palestinian population actually had been limited to the Arabs in the Holy Land prior to 1917, Israel could have absorbed them. Hello, Snowstorm. See, this is what I like, is somebody who really knows their stuff. And that's exactly, I keep thinking you're a woman because you've got a cat as your image, but that's exactly the truth. That trying to look at the state lands. Let me look in here. Okay, I will do this. Okay. Excuse me for keeping saying okay. My husband would have a heart attack here. All right, here it is. I made a little graph, a little chart. Let me get rid of Grandpa here. I hope this is the right one. Okay, there it is. I'll get rid of this one. So see this land? I'm going to show you two. This is the top part. See all the yellow here? All of that yellow is state lands. It is not owned by Arabs. Neither is it owned by Jews. The purple over here around the border of the river, I put the river there, that purple is also state lands. So this bright, shiny blue in the middle is some Arab lands, right? And the dark blue by Tel Aviv on the shore here, all these huge chunks of dark blue, those are Jewish lands. All of this yellow and all of this purple is state lands. And I'm going to redo this, particular one, so that it's a little bit more clear. And I'll show you then this is America. Here's America's state lands, the federal lands. They're not even state lands, they're federal lands. Here to the left or to the right is the map of the land of Israel before it was declared independent. All of that yellow is all state Ottoman Empire lands. The bright purple, see where Gaza is? That purple or pink was state lands because the British started to give state lands not to the Jews, which was required, but to the Arabs. Can you imagine? They allowed illegal immigration of the Arabs. They refused to allow Jews to come in. They set up an apartheid racial segregation law that limited Jews to somewhere around, 5-10% of the entire land they could buy property. But Arabs were not allowed to sell to Jews. And the British set this up. And then they started giving land to people that had just come in from other nations. So they'd come in and they'd start giving land to other Arabs instead of to the Jews. And this whole project of establishing the Jewish state was, guess what? For the Jews. And the San Remo resolution and Emir Faisal, who became King Faisal of Iraq, and the Ottomans and the Balfour Declaration, all of these documents affirmed that the Jews should be given as much land, immigration facilitated as quickly as possible into the land, and for a state to be established. That's from King Faisal of Iraq, before he became King of Iraq, when he was negotiating with Chaim Weizmann. That's a documented letter that was signed at the Paris Peace Conference. And that is his confirmation that as leader of the Arab people at the time, that he was affirming that he supported his brethren. He called them his cousins and his brethren, that he fully supported the Zion cause and wanted them. And by the way, part of it, and understandable, was because he knew the Jews would help the Arabs because the Arabs were inept at building up a civilization, a society. And so he wanted their help. And many, many Arab leaders have said that in the past. We should let the Jews in because they'll help us. And they were committed to that. All right, let me see how much further we can go with this. This is my first time talking about this online. So, okay. They had roughly 400,000 Arabs there pre-1917. It was 1.2 million, I think, by 1948. What? I didn't know that. Okay, so something I said. Yeah. What the Oh my goodness. I promise you, I'm going to have a special folder just for maps from now on because I believe this whole story, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. A map is worth 1,000 words, maybe 10,000 words. And the Jews were prohibited. Well, wait a minute. I'm going to pull this thing up if it's the last thing I do tonight. I know it's okay. Ghetto. Maybe it's under ghetto because that's what I think of it as, the ghettoization of the land. Ghettos. Yeah, I made this map for y'all. That's it. Jewish ghettos. This is the 1940 British racial regulations of the British Mandate Palestine. Now, don't get me wrong. This was totally illegal. This was absolutely contrary to international law. See the blue there? That is the only place Jews could buy land. So when you see all of these maps and the Jews were just over here and this squished in this little land and over here. Why? They call it the N of settlement because it's up the coast, then back down in the valley there, then up in the Jordan, the Galilee. The N of settlement. Why? Because they would not allow Arabs to sell to Jews. There was a Jew-free zone on some, I don't know, like 90% of the land, maybe more. And I'm just showing you the top half of this. So all these little black dots here, these squiggly little free forms, those are Jewish lands where they were building up all over. Do you see all of that in Judea and Samaria? Those were Jewish lands, and there's more. I don't even have enough in here. I realized this the other day. All of these Jewish lands that are in the Grace area are now isolated. They are now out in the middle of Arab lands, and instead of this land that's by justice and right and law, this is supposed to be the entirety of it. The land of Israel is supposed to be the Jewish state of Israel. If you ever, it takes a while, if you don't understand all of the history, to finally come to the understanding that this land here is not, it's not theirs by sufferance. Their citizenship and their sovereignty is not there by sufferance. It is their right. This was determined. The rest of the Ottoman Empire was giving to Arab Muslims. Unfortunately, the injustice to the Kurds was heartbreaking. The Baluchistans, I have no idea. Nobody ever talks about them. They've been fighting for 7,500 years, probably too. They don't have a land. The Armenians were not given a land after their slaughter. So all of these injustices, the one bright light is that Israel in 1920, 22, was given their state so that all the Jews from around the Middle East and Europe and anywhere could come the one state. The Arabs have 22 to 57 states, depending on what you're looking at. They want the Jews to be a landless, sovereignless, helpless minority among the Arabs. They want them to be dhimmi. And the dhimmi would have to bring the tax and in front of all the people, and he would bring it. And he was told he couldn't wear shoes, he'd have to kneel down, and he had to hand it. He couldn't send a servant to send the money. or one of his sons. He had to bring it himself. He could be a rabbi, this 80 years old, and had been teaching the greatest and writing the greatest literature, and a hero. And he'd have to crawl before the sultan or the emir or the sheikh or whomever and hand this money. And then they would slap them upside the head, pull their beard to make sure that they knew that they were subjected. And they would have to dance when in the street when children said, "Dance, Jew." And the children would throw rocks at them. And the Jews had to, even old people would have to walk barefoot. They were not allowed to wear clothes like the Muslims. They had to be hunched over and step aside. And if an Arab Muslim said, "Dance, Jew, dance," this regal man, by the way, they had to wear clothes like beggars. Why? Because because it was law. You could not dress like a Muslim. But they had to be subservient, be sycophantic. They had to, and these children, like in Yemeni, the reports of people who went to Yemen and saw these Jews down in this area said it was so sickening to see these people because they had no dignity. No, they had become like in a movie, the beaten wife who was just like subservient to a brutal husband who's a rapist and a murderer. That's what the Jews were like, because their very character was being destroyed. Anyway, sorry I got off on that. This also interconnected, but this land was all the gray here. Arabs could buy. By the way, the Arabs wanted to sell. The big landowners like Hashim al-Husseini, his family, the Husseinis, they sold land in secret, and then they killed others who did it. Other great landowners sold all that land, their lands, or wanted to sell all their lands to the Jews because the Jews were paying, did you know this? 100 times more than what the land was being sold for before they came. In, I don't know, the 20s, 30s, 40s, you could sell land in the Palestine Mandate for an acre, for what they were selling land for in the heart of the lushest, most rich soil in the United States of America in the 1900s. That's how overpriced. They were paying like 100 times amount. And Hashim al-Husseini told the British, you should, if you cared about them, you wouldn't allow them to sell. Wait a minute. I want to sell my home so I have prosperity, I have money. They were so burdened, they were crushed. The stories of how they were crushed with interest. They would sell, and they would actually have them sign notes that they could not read, and that basically put the landowner, the lender in control of the land, and the little guy, the Fedayeen, the peasant, didn't know, but he'd owe almost his entire produce or harvest of animals, livestock, and food, harvest, to pay the taxes and to pay just the interest on his loan. So they, of course, usually lost their property or abandoned it. They couldn't even pay the tax, so they would just abandon it. Not so the Jews. The Jews did not work that way. And so they built, and the Arabs broke down and destroyed. That's what caused all of this mentality. And I know I'm going to probably stick around for another 15 minutes or so. I know I only have a few people that have come in this very long, but that's okay. I wanted a little bit of exercise and to get started. And so I hope you come back And sometimes I'll do short videos, but I'm going to do a lot of long videos that will be more organized. And I'm going to start nailing and walking through. And hopefully I'll have some people like Snowstorm sounds like a great person to have on with me. And I'll be inviting people too to go through these debates. I've also discovered this: if I put it in my QuickTime viewer, I cannot move easily between clips. And so that's why I haven't done it as much. So I'll clip them or keep them online and just watch it on YouTube, because then you can have the ability to adjust the movement. And that was a mistake. Whatever. Kill me. I don't understand why the British did them so dirty. Well, Snow, where are you from? I always like to kind of get an idea of where everybody's from. Just tell me, are you from Nebraska? Are you from France? Israel? Where are you from? And can you tell me if you're a girl kitty or a boy kitty, if you're still there? Anyway, the British, oh, wow, great. So a boy or girl, man or woman, and where are you from? Anyway, Snow is, not Snow, sorry. Why did the British do them so wrong? Well, firstly, think about God's providence. Of course, he knew this would happen, but he made sure that the men and women who so fervently desired, from the 1600s, by the way, British were looking forward to the day. Pastors, preachers, theologians, and they were persecuted. I don't know why. And said that, yes, Israel will return. The children of Israel will return to Zion. And of course, when you love your scriptures, when you love the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Israel, when you love his word, and he says, those who curse you, I will curse. He who blesses you, I will bless. And this is a solemn covenant, a vow taken on the name of God by the one true God. And this is a law of the world, of the universe. He instituted this law. It's just as much a law as thou shalt not murder or commit adultery or whatever. And he gave this to Abraham, and then it went to Isaac, and then Jacob, Israel, the 12 patriarchs with Moses and all the rest following David. And so if we in America want to save ourselves, save this nation, there are many things that we have to do to save our nation. But the very first thing to do to start would be to bless Israel. I know that in politics and news, when you're passing a law, you're not evangelizing and you're not doing a Bible study. And journalism is supposed to be about facts, and you write the facts of Iran sending so many ballistic missiles over, whatever. And you don't pause to evangelize or do a Bible study or something. But you know what? We never should forget that it is eminently legitimate to refer to the words of the one true God and his wishes for the dearly beloved of my soul, his soul, and to curse Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Israel is to bring a curse upon you. Look at one of the most cursed places in the world. Poverty, anguish, oppression, cruelty, death, despair is the Middle East, where there are more curses said for the Jews than anywhere. But okay, that does not, by the way, Christians, the history of Christian Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, pride, and covetousness is so horrific. But I wasn't going to go into that today because we're not at war. And we didn't do October 7th. Okay. But that's a really legitimate, important topic to talk about: the anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, and perversion of the doctrine of the chosen people in much of Christian history that we pray is behind us. But Christian people are the ones that brought the Jewish people, who were the pioneers, okay? I'm not saying, but they're the ones that made it happen alongside their brethren, the Jews, who were the Zionists. And there's much to be said about the goodness and righteousness and fervency and love and the love of God and the obedience to his commandments of the men and women for centuries that fought for the people of Israel and prayed for the restoration of the exiled Israelites back to their land according to the will of God, who loves them and says, I love you. I loved your fathers. I love you. It's because I love you. I love Jacob, Israel. And so we should not be covetous. We shouldn't hate them because God has chosen them. They have suffered because of being chosen. And so, yeah, I didn't get to be king of Israel. I'm angry. I didn't get chosen to be a priest. Korah got swallowed up by the earth because of that. I'm angry I didn't get to lead the children out of the promised land. Why didn't God let me be born then and I could have been Moses and got all that great acclaim? You can't be envious and covetous of other people's relationships with God. The Lord loved David, the man after his own heart. So was the entire world supposed to hate David because of that special love God had for him? This is what the Arabs can't get over with. And this is what white or European or Western haters of Jews, it's all spiritual. It's religious and it's spiritual. But the haters of Jews, and this is where people that are not religious, I'm looking now at Benny and Stephen and everybody, and so many people that are really smart saw a Jewish man, but he was secular, completely secular, and he couldn't understand why the Jews were the subject of such opprobrium and violence and evil. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I had your number. I wish I had your email. I would just like to say, you know what? Let me explain why. There is a God. The words of God are collected between usually two leather covers. He chose Israel. This is the land he chose for his chosen people. It's his chosen nation. It's his chosen land. And Satan hates you and will do anything possible to destroy you. But you know, or should know, that with God, all things are possible. If God is for us, who can be against us? I will trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding. Great is the mystery. Great is the love. Great is the Lord God. That's not a quote from a psalm. I just was saying that in a prayer. If you only knew the Lord and were, observant, understood the Lord, Yeshua, the Savior, but even if you were just understanding of the scriptures, you would know why people hate you. Who the heck do you think you are? Chosen. That has got to be the most hateful words to many, many Muslims, many, many Christians, many others. Some of the best defenders of Israel now are atheists. Maybe it's because they don't believe the Bible, and Arabs and Christians do. And so they can't hate them because they're chosen, because they don't even believe that they're chosen. Okay, and I could see the snows Storm is agreeing with everything I say, which is so righteous and important. Let's see. She says, or he says, I still don't know where you're from. Movie. Behold Israel. Tiny loves Boston. Hello. Still here on YouTube. I'm teary just thinking about it. Oh, it's still here on YouTube. Teary to think about it. I'll check that out. Okay. None of those comments can I really say anything about. This issue of the ghettos set up, the restriction on immigration, this is why they were a minority. Let me tell you something. Take this away. Chaim Weizmann said to the President of the United States, look, if you would let us, this was about, maybe it was the British, if you would let us not withholden the immigration that they were bound to allow, we'd have 1 million people from Palestine fighting on the side of the British against the Germans. That was in his autobiography. But it's the truth beside him. The reality is, if you look at the numbers, that they took immigration down to almost nothing to please the genocidal maniacs of the Palestinian Arab leadership. Hashemi al-Husseini, the handmaiden of Hitler. But see, this appeasement of the British and what we're seeing here in America, that the state of Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, should affect our foreign policy. Do you think about how stupid and dangerous that is? So we allow a concentration of Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan, and now, because an election for the presidency might hang on the difference between the number of electors from that state, they start giving up, perhaps, on our core principles, our foundational commitments, our friendships, our allies. No wonder America's not trusted and shouldn't be trusted until we regain the trust of the world, because we have broken so many vows to our best friends. Think of Afghanistan. Used to live by Dearborn. Dearbornistan. Oh, Dearbornistan. We have to really utterly change the immigration from Arab worlds. We have to look at bringing in the Christians that are being slaughtered in Africa, Islamic Africa and Islamic Arab countries, and bring the Christians in. And then we should think about bringing in Muslims and how that affects. It's basically bringing Jew hatred of Western civilization and Sharia law and violence into our culture. And what we have to do is ask, do we allow our culture to be destroyed in the name of our culture? We believe in freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and therefore we're afraid to say that Islam is incompatible with our culture and therefore would destroy. Look, if I said to the king or the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, would you allow immigration of 20 million evangelical Christians as full-blown citizens that can build churches, vote, have perfectly equal rights with Arab Muslims into Saudi Arabia, or Jews? Would he allow that? Would he be hated? No, because he's not Jewish or American. He wouldn't allow it because he wants his nation to be Arab, Arabian, and he wants it to be Muslim. So he does this thing that's so simple for all of us. Let's do the math. If doing 1 or 5 or 10 is okay, then what about 1,000,000? I call this like maximalization test. Take it to the maximum and see if it's the way to go. We have women police, but if all police were women and there were no men on the police force, would that be good? So you have to start making decisions as to how many women you'd have on your police force, because having an all-female police force of women that are 5'2" going up against 6'4" men is not going to work. And other reasons. No offense to people like me, women. The same thing is true with Islam. I'm not against Muslims, and there's so many kind, loving Muslims, but they're in London right now and elsewhere saying, we don't want, I saw this just a couple days ago, we don't want Great Britain, the UK, to lose who it is and become like an Arab nation. This is a Muslim, presumably one who loves Islam and Allah, their God. Why? Because despite loving their God, because it goes back generations and, whatever, they like their religion. But they know what kind of society comes out from that religion. And the only way you can have a free society, there is no free society with Islam as a majority or close to a majority. It always dissolves into violence, authoritarianism, mob rule, or over the minorities. So the point is that they're saying, no, we want that. You know what? The Arabs in Israel want to stay in Israel. They don't want to be part of the Palestine Authority or part of Gaza because they know there's freedom with the Jews. Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't get that far. Forgive me. I really wanted to get to Stephen Burnell because, this is where I stopped it. Stephen just made this amazing presentation. He nailed it. And Norman, who hates this man, and when you go through it, it's like he's frothing at the mouth. He hates Stephen Burnell because Stephen Burnell is not an academic, a scholar, and he hasn't written 27 books. But you know what? Some of the most brilliant men, most educated men in the world were the most evil men. Just because you're educated doesn't mean you're right when it comes to how it practically works out in the world. So no. Norman, just because Stephen Burnell does not have a degree in Middle East studies or hasn't written 4 books, you are wrong. Steve whooped your butt. Steve Burnell whooped your butt. So what does Norman say? This is so brilliant. It's so appropriate. He turns, so he should be responding to Steve Burnell's points, right? And he can't because he would get destroyed. So he says, Benny Morris, I want to ask you a question or something like that. So he's afraid to take on Steve Burnell. That's another reason he hates him, because Steve Burnell would kick his butt. So I guess we'll end with that. I could go on for hours. So he goes to, right? See, Norman, not Lex Fridman. Lex made such a terrible mistake here, because what he could have done is said, all right, Moeen and Norman, you ask them a question, and that will take like 5, 6 minutes, even 10 minutes. They'll have all the time to answer. You can interrupt and ask questions, like secondary questions or whatever. And Lex will keep control of it. Then they get to start asking you questions. And then you start asking them questions again. There would have been a point to this. Steve Burnell, Destiny, gave a brilliant breakdown of all the garbage that he sees in as fresh eyes in this debate. These guys are all used to it because they're doing it or part of it. And he pees in his pants and turns to Benny Morris, who he knows he's going to whoop his butt because Benny's just a nice guy sitting there chatting. Anyway, well, look, guys, my email is elizabeth1@wnd.com. That's for WND, WorldNet Daily. Snowstorm. Why don't you send me your email? And Tiny Loves Boston's, write me and say hi, Elizabeth1, the number 1, at WND.com. And I know I had very few people on here tonight, but I hope you send me your comments and tell me what I could have done. There's so many things that I could have done better, but I'm not going to give up. What I'm going to do is learn from the mistakes I made tonight, and I'm going to start kicking butt at some point. And all of your suggestions and help would really matter. And so let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem. But more than that, that's important. Let's bless Jerusalem and the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Let's pray for victory over the forces of darkness and evil that would destroy Israel. I'm kind of praying while I'm saying this. We pray for victory over the enemy. We pray for total victory and surrender. There is no ceasefire. There is only surrender, unnegotiable surrender and release of the hostages. We pray for the courage of Netanyahu and everybody in his government. I know that these things are very difficult for so many reasons. We pray for the hostages' families. We pray for the hostages that are so brutalized, legs cut off. One husband and wife, she has one leg cut off, and he has another leg cut off. And they're smiling and they're going to go on because they can make a choice, whereas the Palestinians have no choice, according to Moeen. And, I'll tell you what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to take out all the boring garbage out of this and condense it down and then do another rendition of this. Or maybe I'll do another one. Back to praying, or what we should be praying for. I'm just affirming this. We should pray for truth. We should pray for the salvation of this nation, the restoration, the destruction of those who would do evil to our country, who call for its death. We pray that their tongues are tied, that their shoulders are burdened, that their relationships with their other evildoers are undone, that innocents who are sincere, that they sincerely want to know the truth and do and say the right thing, that they are cleansed and protected from the evil of these people who call for genocide but pretend they're just trying to be fair. We pray for all of those who are fighting the IDF, all of the intelligence services, the journalists, the lawyers, the heroes that are fighting. They're all part of one family, the children of Israel, and they have this hardship. All things work together for good to those who are called according to his purpose, the called according to his purpose. That's what the scriptures say. And so this great evil will work out for good. It will. It will work out for good. And we need to pray for that, beseech our Lord for that. And yeah, well, listen, guys, it's been a pleasure with my little friends here. And thank you. Sorry for the problems, but you have a great day. God bless you and keep you. God bless Israel and keep Israel. God, whose eyes are always open, looking at the walls of Jerusalem. Amen and amen. I will see you tomorrow because I'm going to do this every day other than Shabbat. Bye-bye, everybody. Okay, now how do I turn this dang thing off? Okay, finish.